Hi, I'm Rebecca Chan. I'm a climate champion from San Diego, California, and I'm here with Dr. Don Melnick, professor of Ecology, Evolution, and Environmental Biology at Columbia University. So I've read that you are a professor of conservation biology, but you're also very involved in UN advising and more policy-oriented things.
Yes.
So I also see that you're the co-director of the Center for Environment, Economy, and Society.
Right.
So how do you see those three things relating to each other?
Okay. Well, that's a good question. Thank you for inviting me to do this interview. So here's how they relate. The early part of I see my career as actually in thirds. The early part of my career really was involved in doing basic science. I was interested in evolutionary questions, and my expertise is in genetics, and I use genetics as a tool to understand evolution. As I began, but I was really interested in working on species around the world, first of primates, monkeys and apes, and then other kinds of organisms. And so I did that for a number of years, and then, but I was working in areas of the world and on species and habitats that were being heavily affected by human activities and were shrinking and disappearing, and populations of species were disappearing. So I kind of came to a point where it became very hard for me to continue to do the basic science research without trying to at least apply some of that to preserving the areas in which the species that I worked on lived. It just seemed to me there was kind of a moral dilemma there to do that. It was like making my living off of working on the species but not helping them survive into the future.
Okay.
So that got me moving more toward, how do you make conservation happen? So I moved from basic science research to applying those same techniques to conservation questions and how to perpetuate populations. Then, as I was doing that, it became clear to me that that was not enough, and that you really had to bring more than that to the table if you wanted to accomplish what I was hoping to accomplish, which was to have large areas of habitat set aside for long periods of time in order to sustain these populations and species. And so the only way to do that was to bring other kinds of disciplines in, particularly in the social sciences. So that's how I got involved with economists and political scientists, policymakers, eventually the UN, and then even more than that, advising heads of state and doing other things like that. It really was, what I bring actually is the knowledge of all the science, the knowledge of where things are going to go if we don't change course. And I bring that to the conversation, but I don't have the expertise in the social sciences, so I work with other social scientists. So the center that you mentioned, the center that I co-direct, which is Environment, Economy, and Society, is really reflecting the nature of how we're going to achieve sustainability going forward, which is to bring science of the environment together with economics, with social aspects. And I co-direct that with a professor from the business school, Jeffrey Healy.
Okay, so you're like the environment part of that.
That's right, exactly.
Okay, and I guess a lot of the things that you mentioned seem to be centered around biodiversity, and I guess conserving habitat so that we can ensure biodiversity. Do you see that relating differently to the specific problem of climate change versus just, I guess, human development, like taking over land?
That's a good question, and it's a very good question. And it's a question that people don't ask themselves all that often. And the reason I say that is that we have every reason to be concerned about climate change, but the effects of climate change are decades away. Probably 2050 or beyond is when we're going to see the really significant effects of climate change, assuming that our modeling of everything is correct and we really do see major impacts, which I suspect we will. A lot of those major impacts are in motion, and even if we would change what we do over the next couple of decades, we're still going to see those effects, so we're going to have to mitigate those effects. However, that's sort of out there, and what's happening right now, the impact or the effects on habitats, the species that live within habitats, the disappearance of populations of different species, the change in freshwater systems, the change in marine ecosystems, the collapse of coral reef systems around the world, the decline in fisheries. I mean, all of those things are not due to climate change. Okay, climate change will exacerbate those, but those are due to the impact of human activities. And what I am concerned about is that we bring as much energy, science, motivation to dealing with those effects. And those impacts, which are happening right now and happen every month, as we do to the long-term prospects of what climate change is likely to do to us. So that's something we have to keep both of those in balance. I can guarantee you that over the next several decades, most species will disappear. Most ecosystems will decline. Most habitats will be destroyed, not because of climate change, but because of the actions of people. And that's what we have. To give you one measure of that. Okay? Every month, 1 million hectares of tropical forest is cleared. Now that's 2.5 million acres, and that happens every single month. Okay? That's not because of climate change, that's because of people removing that for a variety of reasons. Some of them logical, some illogical, but they are removing that. So think about that. Every single month, when the 1st of May started, you could say during April, 1 million hectares was cleared of tropical forest. All right? So now, as we go through this month of May, another 1 million hectares of tropical forest will be cleared.
That's frightening.
Okay, and so that's what I mean by us trying to confront both of those, the long-term challenges, environmental challenges that climate change will bring, and the immediate challenges that human activities are bringing to all of the landscapes, all of the habitats, all of the species on the face of the earth.